So awesome team, and it's just great to, I guess, like I said, welcome Dave. It's good to get to know you guys before we get started. We've got not too much of a brief around tonight, but it's picking up those two, I guess, the two things is a bit of that parenting theme, but also about the current situation that we all find ourselves in. Dave's super experienced, passionate about, I guess, the environment, farming, and people in sport, which is pretty cool. And the other thing, I guess, is we were talking before, it's an interesting time for us as both of us because he's talking to you as parents, but he's talking to himself as well as a parent of a couple of kids the same age. So, welcome, Dave.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, so I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old daughters. And I said to my 17-year-old at the start of year 13, I said, sweetheart, Dad's been thinking about your year. She goes, have you, Dad? I said, yes, sweetheart, I have. I think it's going to be defined by 2 words. And she said, what are they? I said, the first one's freedom. And I think you've got that nailed. I said, the second one's responsibility. I said, that's the one I'm really looking forward to seeing you work on this year. And so, well, if everything goes to plan, she's heading to Otago next year. So I've given her freedom to also then work on that responsibility next year at university as they do. Yeah, so it's interesting what to introduce really. So I'm on my 3rd Olympics. I've just finished last year with the Chiefs. I was with them for 11 campaigns. I've been with the Sevens for probably 11 or 12 years with Gordon and then Clark Laidlaw now. So I've been in and around the high performance sport area for a long time. I've just recently retired as a clinical psychologist, so I was 20 years as a clinical psych before I went into sport, or as part of moving into sport. So it seems quite funny now that I get to, talk about myself as a farmer, so I'm learning how to be a farmer. I grew up on a farm. Mum and Dad were farm shepherds and managers, so we never owned land. And then the idea was that one day I'd hopefully buy a little block and Mum and Dad could go and retire there and I could look after them for 20 years as they looked after me for the front end. I said to them the other day, I said to Dad, look, the plan is, because they're there now full-time on the little farm, and I said to Mum and Dad, I said, you don't have to worry about buying a thing now because you looked after me for 20, so I'm going to pay for all your toilet paper, your beer and ammunition on the way out. I think Dad was quite chuffed about that. So I feel like I'm really quite a lovely stage of life. Like my daughters are, we'll get to talk about this as we yarn over the next hour, but it's an interesting journey, as you go from being a parent of young kids and trying to establish yourself professionally and hold all that stuff and balance it all out and juggle it all, and then you get to a point where they start getting to these ages and they really do start to shine. I reckon there's a little switch that seems to happen in that year 13. I've seen it come this year and it's just something happens in that space. Some of them have it earlier, but I've just seen that nicely in the last 2 or 3 months with the oldest girl. Just something just starts to click, and so having that faith that it will come, just be patient and hold your breath and then hope that the train wrecks aren't too big. So I guess it's an interesting space. So I get to come and share and talk with you guys about, I guess, how we best support these young people, and then for you young people, how we can as parents best support your parents as well. So I guess I'm going to give you a little bit of we'll just have discussions. You'll be talking, I won't be talking for an hour. But I guess I've got to that stage now where I've got a bit of an idea of a bit of a recipe about how it seems to roll over that time. I'm really hoping Tokyo takes place. They've certainly got some frameworks, I think, to be able to do that. The Rio was a massive security bubble, so they know how to do bubbles. So there's no reason why I don't think they can. There's no reason in my mind why they can't do another bubble which is around keeping people well and having a games. It will be very different games, but I'm pretty sure we can do that. So I'm hopeful. And then after the back of Tokyo, I'll be retiring from sport, and then I'll be full-time farming. So you're getting to hear the synergy, I guess, over those years about what the ingredients are. So I hope it's useful. We've had a good yarn today with the stags about bits and pieces. So yeah, nice to meet people, especially hearing the young people talk about what the words would be. I wonder what my daughters would say. I think the 13 or 14-year-old would say very different things than the oldest one. I guess the place to start, and it's obviously going to be, what, we've got till 7?
Yep.
So we've got a nice chunk of time. I want to show you first what because I guess my role is, it's an interesting one as a performance psych, not now, but I guess I'm just a mind coach now while I fill out that time. Because a lot of athletes would come, and I got to a point where people would ask if I'd be in their team, and then I'd have an opportunity to say, well, I'll just come and meet you and we'll just talk about who you are and how you roll and whether that's going to fit, and then a decision will sort of be made in that day, and me with you and you with me, and then if it's a team, the same sort of thing. And so I guess that this is how it would usually roll, is that I'd say, what's the goal? And they'd say, I want to win a gold medal. And I'd say, that's fantastic. And I'd just say, we'll just talk about what your goal is, what my goal is. And I sort of got to a point where I'd be quite upfront with them because of my, I guess as a clinical psychologist, I started off working with high-risk offenders in Auckland City through the Youth Justice Court, and then with the police and Child, Youth and Family with child abuse team. So I guess I was in a very dark place where I started out as a clinical psychologist and then working with gold medalists at the other end, so there's that whole spectrum. And I'd say to them, well, my goal is I hope you don't kill yourself. And they'd be like, holy smoke, that's a pretty serious way to go with a conversation. I said, well, it's a really important one to start with, because if you're going to spend 4, 8, 12 years of your life doing something, I want that to be the best years of your life. And so you can see that conversation with them straight away as they're like, holy smoke, they weren't picking that. But as I look around the young people in here, that would be my sense, is that your reflections of your time as an athlete is the best time of your life at that stage. And so they're like, oh, okay, that's a good start. So we're going to do some things. We did this with the rugby men today. Now, I'm not sure what the level 2 requirements are. Are we allowed to sing for level 2 in a room?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because with the sevens we have, it's ironical with the singing. That's some lovely stuff looking at heart rhythms and singing. And so, if you take the 4 tenors, when they wire them up to EEGs and sing in harmony, they end up with the same heartbeat. So it's a lovely, lovely metaphor. I was with the Japanese team in the World Cup for that big road into there with them too, and we did a lot of singing, and they're incredibly respectful people, very community oriented. So singing with them made them, because their theme or our theme was one team, but one team, one family, one community, one country. And then when the tornado came through, or the typhoon came through, the Scotland game was essentially, it was a theme about looking after the country's grief. And so you can imagine what the coach's talk was with those men before they went to play Scotland after losing 28 Japanese the night before in the typhoon. There was no way they were going to lose that game. So the singing part is more than, we're going to play with it a little bit now, but there's so many layers to it. So in the sevens we have 8 of 9 songs, Tongan, Samoan, Fijian, Māori. It's very hard to find a European song that fits, so we do a lot of different language songs. Now this one, I think you'll know this song. I did 8 years of play centre, and this is the irony. My dad was old school, so my upbringing is probably old school south where you work on Thursday too. Like what it was down here was probably what I grew up with Dad and as a farmer in Hawke's Bay. And he taught me many things, but he didn't teach me how to play. There was not much play. There was work on Christmas Day. And so 8 years at play centre, I had 2 daughters, 8 years at play centre, you learn how to play. So we're going to sing this song because I want you to have an experience about what my goal is and what my goal is with my daughters, and my goals would be if I was thinking about parenting these young people now with regards to how we help. At the moment it's a really interesting situation because we're not sure what sport you're going to be playing, also not what sport, but what events. We don't know how far you can travel. We don't know whether you're even travelling internationally for the next 3 to 4 years. So Tokyo could not happen. And then there's the whole thing, well, crikey, what does that mean for the Com Games? And what does it mean for the Winter Olympics? And then what does it mean for Para? So there's so much unknown as a young person in elite sport. Am I actually going to do what I love doing at the level that I'm preparing myself for? And so I guess supporting the athletes that at the moment I'm supporting, some of them are at their absolute peak. So there are some that are ready to go to this Olympics, and they would have been 12 years into their campaign at their very best. And now they've had to be told, actually it's not happening, and we're not sure it's going to happen. So imagine what their mental health and how you work with them in that framework. And so you guys, when you think about if you can't get to go to an event, what that would be like after 12 years of prep. So you'll see how this all comes together. So the singing, we'll just listen. I'm going to do one verse, but just listen. So we'll just do the first verse again. We'll do it once more and then we'll do it all together.
The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one, the little one stops to suck his thumb, and they all go marching down to the ground to get out of the rain. Boom, boom, boom.
So we had the stag singing that this morning. Well, we had 107, didn't we? At the Chiefs, my one KPI was decibels. So I have a decibel meter on my phone. Where my office was before the building got sort of revamped, was right by the change room. So I just have my phone on, and I have it in between training sessions, just they wouldn't know it was there, and I'd just be recording the laughter. Secure attachment in a baby is sleeps well, eats well, craps well, pretty much. Obviously there's sometimes variations with how much they have to finish off after being born, but that's sort of what you're looking for. And then in adults, it's eats well, sleeps well, and shares well, so connects to people and shares who they are without sort of being overly guarded. And stomach laughter, so full laughter is an expression of, for me, of secure attachment. So when you see people, you can actually see some people when they laugh, they're quite contained in their laughter, and then some just absolutely let go, and sometimes they can't stop. So I'd record laughter, and the guys that know me, they know that I just push singing hard out. So in pre-season I have 2 sessions a week. We sing twice a week. They're not allowed to sing under 110 decibels. And I just keep a record of the decibel number on the wall, and the boys will play their best footy when they're singing high decibels. So we're not going to do decibels, but we're going to sing together. So this is all of us now on this one. The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching one by one, the little one stops to suck his thumb, and they all go marching down to the ground to get out of the rain. Boom, boom, boom.
The ants go marching too.
We'll carry it's like up to 1,005. So just in with your family groups, and if your dad's working, so you can join the other family, and your mum and dad or your mum's there, so you can join as a 4. But all I'm asking you to do is just have a little chat about what was it like, just a very simple exercise for us to sing. And I want you to talk about handbrake. Handbrake is, nah, don't sing. What's this got? Jason, session's over. Right? That's like handbrake full on. I'm out of here. This is ridiculous.
I'm not drinking.
To no handbrake. So the continuum is handbrake to no handbrake. And just have a little chat about with each other. Where were you? We're thinking, what? No. Or yes, yeah, wow, that's a great song. I sing that all the time with the kids. And then just have a little chat about, were you like handbrake on or handbrake off? And then just have a little yarn, make sure you talk across each 2 or 3 of you, where were you? And then we'll talk a little bit about what that's about. But just have a little yarn, and then we'll go from there. This all becomes part of the conversation. The Japanese, there's a book called Hagakure, I think it is, or Hagekura. It's the secret wisdoms of the samurai, the way of the warrior, and looks at Bushido. Now within that, it's a transcript or the notes of one of the most famous samurai ever, and it was a New Zealander that went to, I like to think the story is at 15 he went to Japan to study samurai and never came home. I like to think that was the story. But he did come home, and he's a lecturer at Canterbury University and Japan University. So he took the notes of one of the most famous samurai ever and put them into English for us to enjoy. One of the words that I read in there was Kasumono, Katsumono. Now its literal translation in English is quintessential weirdo. How beautiful was that? Now I looked at that term and I just went, holy smoke. photographed it, highlighted it, went, there it is. There's 28 years of psychology in one word. Now, it's an endearment, so you can't call yourself quintessentially weird. Only it can be bestowed upon you by others who observe your behaviour. Now, what it represented is it was, at the most purest level, if we think value-based code of conduct, they were exemplary. Community-based, loyal, sacrificial, very humble, uncorruptible, because back then, drug lords could hire the best samurai to guard there, and because the samurai followed a code, they'd have to then also defend them, even though they weren't moral. So it's your absolute moral-based person, plus they were deadly. So it's the combination of the ultimate warrior, really, in that time. And it can only be someone saying, you are katsumono. And if you look at the Bell distribution curve, 68% live in the middle, who are usually pretty inconsistent, unreliable. Sometimes their morals are good. When they're drunk, their morals are pretty shocking. That sort of group. But this group is your fourth standard deviation in the general population, the 0.004% or 0.001% of the general population. Now, this becomes really important. So the athlete says to me, I want to win a gold medal. I say to them, I actually want you to live. And they're like, what? And then that's where the conversation starts. Because essentially the quintessential weirdo, the katsumono, is that person is themselves. They are them beautiful selves and with no handbrake. So the handbrake idea was, if you've seen Madagascar's Europe's Most Wanted, there's a scene in there where the penguin commander says, they're driving through the city in a nuclear-powered jeep, out of control. The commander goes to the soldier, sergeant, penguin, sergeant, where's the brakes? And the little sergeant penguin goes, sorry sir, I didn't put any in. And this jeep's out of control, and then this colonel says to the commander says to the sergeant, I love your commitment, soldier. And so for me, the no handbrake is, because essentially if you think about the gold medal, I like to put it down to say fourth on the, still the outcome goal, very, very important, because that's part of the catalyst. But I like just to move it quietly down the list of importance, because they hold it at number one. And that's when we get ourselves into trouble, because it's the only goal. And it's like the yin and the yang. You need actually harmony in that space for that to be as powerful as it can be without blowing people apart. So I like to move it to 3 or 4 on the most important list, and then at the top, I'll say, well, my first goal is that you be you. And so this becomes a really important part for us as parents to understand. If we've got 3 or 4 goals that we're referencing, it changes the conversation straight away, and also the energy. And then they'll say, okay, so how do we do this, David? And so if we can hold that in our mind, that our goal is for them to be their quintessential selves, there's a little equation, because I was trying to challenge myself to be a bit of an Einstein and come up with 28 years of psychology. What would the equation be? And the equation, there's 3 lines, or there's 2 lines to it, but the first line is identity times courage equals authenticity. So know who you are, have the courage to be that person no matter what, which then equals quintessential weirdo. Quintessentially weird, being yourself, authentic. So that's our first goal, and then this is where you're going to do some more talking. And then they go, how does this start to look? And then this is a lovely story, because a lot of parents, same as you people, because of people in the Waikato know who I am, will link in and say, especially in rugby, because rugby's such a big sport, can you catch up with my son? Just have a yarn to my son over a coffee. And then one mum linked in and said, I'm really worried about my son, he won't come out of his room, he's playing Fortnite the whole time, and he hasn't played rugby for 2 years, what do I do? I said, I'll have a yarn with him. And then she said, he'll come and see you because he knows who you are. I said, okay, we'll have a coffee. So he walks in, sits down, and we do the basic joining stuff, and then I say to him, I didn't know him. I said, I've never seen your name before. Where is that from? And he said, I don't know. And I said, it's probably pretty important that you go and find that out, because I think you're from up north in the Arctic Circle. I think you could be Scandinavian or in the fjords there somewhere. I said, mate, you could be Viking. And he's like, you could just see that little moment start with him. And so his homework was to go and find out where his name originated from. He came back 2 weeks later, and I'd done some research on it too, and I'd found out what he found out. He walked in, and I said, he was smiling, So I said, I think you found out what I found out. He said, yeah, both sides, mum and dad were Vikings. And now that moment becomes so critically important. And I said to him, you know what that means? Did you research the marital ceremonies? And I said, because you're 18, 19, you're probably going to get married at some point. And I said, so I'm expecting you wear full helmets, horns, the works. Because you see how that starts a different path for him? He'd been thinking, I've got to be an All Black, I've got to be Super Rugby's, 150 caps, etc., etc. And what I'm saying to him is, we'll get to that bit, but first I want you to be you. And you can only be you if you know your identity. And then that's your name, your heritage, and that all starts to run through. So then now I'm going to get you to talk again, because this becomes our work. Ironically, my work in that space with performance psychology is about psychology, it's not about performance. Because if we can take care of the people, the performance takes care of itself. Team situations, individual sports, triathlon, archery, basketball, same thing, rugby, team, individual. The shared individual identity in a collective group becomes a powerful collective identity if people know who they are and bring that to that space. By yourself, still just as powerful. So it is the work. The outcome will come off that. So have a little chat with each other. Just going to jump in. My apologies, I'll do that because we've got to 7 o'clock to wrap it up. So I guess you're already starting to see my approach, or the way that I support an athlete and a team, as we put outcome, I just leave outcome alone. I love winning and I hate losing. And that's a beautiful thing. Like some people will often say, you need to be less aggressive, or you need to learn how to control your temper. And I have a lot of athletes that get directed to me because they think they've got anger problems, because they start to feel bad about having this competitive spirit. And all I see is they just haven't got the monk sorted. They've got the warrior sorted, but they haven't got the monk sorted, and they can't control the engine. But it's still, I'd rather have that than have flat, because you cannot breed competitiveness in someone if they don't have it. You have it or you don't have it. If you don't have it, you play social sport. If you have it, you get so frustrated playing social sport, it drives you insane, so you don't play unless you can play at the top level. And you just see that in people, even retired elite athletes really struggle to go back to social sport because it's just not the way they're wired. They go and play golf, they have to play 6 under, even though they haven't played for 4 years. It's just the way they tick. And so I just try and help them understand that's lovely. But this is where this all starts to balance it out. We help bring the monk by understanding our heritage. And so this is just some ideas for us as we work through this. So when I go to see families in their homes, there's always the walls of the performance. There's the trophies. And there's nothing. I'm pleased not making judgment, but this is just observation. There's the ribbons from equestrian. There's the photos from rugby teams. There's the cups from prefect. Whatever it might be. There's the outcome wall, a very, very proud wall. And then I'm looking for the harmony, because there's your competitive wall. So there's the warrior wall. And the balance wall is I'm looking for the family wall. I'm looking for the photos of the whakapapa. I'm looking for the history of the pioneers that came from wherever they came from, who went through the Middle East or whatever they did, or the aunties and uncles that were adventurers. That's the wall I'm looking for. So the first goal from tonight for me, if I was supporting your young people, but you as a family, would be, it's really important to invest in that space. So with my 2 teenage girls, people go, have you got preparing your daughters for the complexity of adult life now in this modern world? Well, I said it comes down to one word, which is identity. Because we take a clinical psychology view as people's resilience is anchored in knowing who they are. So if you know who you are, because a lot of people have said, how have you dealt with this COVID situation? And now what COVID has brought us is it has accentuated the unknown. Because the reality is we have no idea where this is going. We have no idea yet what wave is what wave. We have no idea what this means. If you get it, can you get it again? And what does it mean if you get it for your later life? There's so many unknowns when you listen to the social media and the media. If you don't know who you are, there's an unknown there. You are stuffed in the unknown of today and tomorrow. You cannot deal with the anxiety of what's coming if you don't know who you are. But if you know who you are, there is automatically some sense of stability about I can step into the unknown, because sport is about releasing the handbrake, letting go, seeing what happens. We can only do that willingly if we know who we are on the inside. There's just something strong that comes from that space. So my encouragement would be, because what I found is most families, in my own family, still got so much work to do on that. While people are alive, do interviews. Get these people to go and interview their grandparents on video, on recorder. Tell us about your childhood, grandpa. And then let them talk. There's the starting exercise straight away. You can guarantee if you do that, you watch these kids, listen, young people, they'll be like that. Why? Because that's blood. Blood knows blood. There's something about that connection with people, and it's our family is deeply anchoring. So that would be my first bit of work. Preparing someone for 4 years in Olympic Games, 8 years, 12 years, I want to know that history. I want to know they know that history. And then, this is our first goal. When you know who you are, your first goal is to honour that by being that person. Full stop. Not be that person and win. It is just be that person, whoever that is. So the young man about doing the full Viking wedding, it's him honouring his ancestry, because it's a fascinating stuff. When we look at carbon atoms now, and people look at, our anchor, our link to our ancestry is so incredibly deep, but we don't spend much time looking at it. It still exists. So I was saying to the men today, my ancestry on my Galbraith side goes back, I've taken it back to 1276 in a little place out of Stirling in Glasgow, where that ancestor was Robert Galbraith. Now Robert Galbraith was also my direct grandfather on my dad's side. My father's Vince Robert Galbraith. The ancestor had a really dark shadow, but he also had a good light as well. His dark shadow was he was violent, he was alcoholic, and he was a gambler. My direct grandfather, Robert Galbraith, alcoholic, violent, gambler. So you can see how that, you go, holy smoke. So how we are today, I don't even know how many thousands of years ago that is, same characteristics. He also was responsible for 2 uprisings against the national government. I love that. I hate the government, right? And so it's still alive in me too. But when I look at my dad, I still see the grizzly bear that was back then, and I still feel the grizzly bear in me. My middle name's Raymond, David Raymond Galbraith. I said to them today, I'm very lucky that my mum named me. So I get my mum's dad's name, Raymond. And people go, how that's not important? It's really important, because it starts to help me understand my heritage. It also helps me understand that no one's perfect. And it also helps me understand that you can be imperfect and perfect. So you see how there's so many layers in there about life which become critically important for our youth and through the complexities of right now not knowing when they're going to play sport again. Well, you know what I mean, at that level, because you're going to play sport again. So there's the first goal. If I was really supporting you, I'd want to know that you know that. I'd want to see that in your house. I want to see that in a way that you're going to pass that on to your children when you have your children. Because the greatest gift you can give our kids, parents, is knowing who they are. Full stop. The second one we can get is that they give it then to their kids. Job done. We are the bridge. So that becomes, see, look, I think that just gets brushed aside a little bit because we've just got so many other things that we seem to be busy with, but we forget that. So there's the first one. Now, time races. So then we take, well, what's the layer off? So that's who we were and who we are. And I go, okay, so I want them to have a very clear identity on who they are as a person, but then we also look at, well, but who's the person in the here and now? And so the next thing that I think about, what are the layers I want? What do we need to be that person? And that's the second bit in the equation, identity times courage. So they know who they are. So imagine the courage it would take to have a Viking helmet in your game bag when you go into a basketball change room. First thing you do is you take out your full cowhide horn helmet and stick it right on your hook. And there's a photo of Obelix and Asterix. You young guys don't know what that is, but that's your whānau's right there, and he's got this double axe head, which is the axe is the Vikings' #1 choice of weapon. And he's just come back from a raid. And you're like, whoa, and you're like starting to... So that would be like such a wonderful way that we can build that. So that's how we bring that alive. So then there's so we can look at courage. So here's your next question to have a little chat about. It was based off another little story. They asked the #1 US Navy fighter pilot. He was named by all the pilots who are alive to be the best pilot ever. So it's a bit like Mark Todd was named the rider of the century. This guy was named the pilot of the century by all living pilots in the US Navy Air Force. And they interviewed him, Michael Gervais interviewed him on a podcast and said, why are you so good? And he said, the first thing is I love flying. Never want to be #1. I just love flying. If I couldn't fly a jet, I'd fly a Cessna. So this is really, really important. So you got identity times courage, the courage to be the person. The courage to be the person is you answer the first question first, which is, do I love what I'm doing? Because each day, if you're going to honour who you are and the time you've been given, then it would make sense that you actually do it by doing what you love with who you love. So then individually, you guys, if I was working with you, is you'd not only have to tell me and show me who you are, but you then have to prove to me that you love your sport. Same with those athletes who want to win a gold medal with me up in Cambridge. Because if they do not love their sport, I'll say this to them, so my goal now changes, my goal is for you to retire. Because usually they've got there because mum and dad have spent so much money on them, they then say, do you realise how much money those damn horses cost us? You damn straight you're going to go in the New Zealand jumping squad, right? And then they just go down that path because they want to make mum and dad proud. And then it just becomes something that's like an unconscious dance where there's no one's at fault. Kids want to make their parents proud. Parents want to give the kids the most opportunity they can, so they mortgage the house 7 times and away we go overseas. So that becomes, for me, the biggest challenge. Do you love what you're doing? And that's what that guy really reiterated. So then I go, okay, number 1 goal, be yourself. Number 2 goal, do what you love. So then the courage but to chase what we love. And that becomes our way that we operate, and I want to hear it in their language. I love listening to interviews of athletes when they get the old microphone shoved in their face after they've won. And if I hear, I'm feeling so relieved, that is not love, people. That is, I was petrified I was going to let people down. So if I hear that, that's a warning straight away that we need to do some work in that space. If they love their sport, they should not be able to talk. They should just be so excited, crying, so over the moon that they've achieved that big thing. All right? That's what love looks like. So the courage thing becomes critical because then he said, okay, I love what I do. And the second one is he said, when a new jet comes out from the factory, it comes with a warning about how fast you can fly it before they get buffet in the wings. They get so violent that it blows apart. And he said, I used to hop in a jet and I'd just fly it as fast as I could in a straight line. I'd go faster and faster and faster until the buffet started in the wings. And then once the rattling got sort of concerning, he would just relax and stay in that shake. So he flew all of his flash jets basically like that. And he said, because that's where 100% performance is. Where other guys, because that's best jet, at its edge, best performance. Everyone else would get to the buffet and they get scared and come back to 95 or 85%. So I was like, man, that's a wicked metaphor. So here's the question you're going to have a little yarn about. Because there's 2 things with this. There's a question for you young people about buffet, and you'll get that question shortly, but there's also the question for the parents, because the research is really clear. Children only take on board 25% of our spoken messages. So all of the things you've said to your kids in all these years, 25% is only stuck. Right? Which is a terribly scary thought. But here's the best part about it is 75% about how you've behaved has stuck. So 75%, which could be worrying, right? But this is classic, isn't it? So essentially what it's saying is it's irrelevant what you've said, but it's very relevant how you've behaved, or how you behave today. And I wasn't eavesdropping. I heard you learning guitar, right? So there's an example of courage, right? So your kids see you struggle with a G and a C and a D, and how do you do what? And you're trying to play Eric Clapton or whatever you might be trying to do. They see that and see how now you're portraying a behaviour of courage. You're not caught up on how good you sound and whether you're going to busk and make more money than whatever, right? You're just in the journey. So this is as relevant for parents as it is for our kids. I hear a lot of parents say to their kids, just be brave. But they're like the most anxious parents you've ever seen. Conservative, careful, they're not brave. And yet they're telling the kids, if I was your age, what I would do? Like, shit, you would not, shut up, you're a wussy. The kids know it, and you see the look on their faces like, whatever. So the question's as relevant for both parents and children. So you're going to ask yourself, in the last week, how much rattle has there been? How much wing of buffet has there been in your life? Because really what we're talking about, courage is discomfort. But it's not all the time. It's just when I look at your weekly schedule or your monthly schedule or yearly schedule, I see habits of discomfort. And you get home, you're done, you have your rest for the evening and rest cover, and these guys too with the sport, they can still recover. And as we said to the rugby guys today, this is healthy when you see on their day off, they actually look after themselves. So courage is also not doing stuff. So in the last week, how much rattle has there been in your life which is from your own choice? And same with your sport, same with school, thinking about exams. How much rattle is there in your study prep? Because I know big exams are coming up for year 13 at the moment. And you just have a chat with each other. How much rattle is there? Rattle is under the pump, choosing to be there, pushing the edge of your skill, maybe going to make some mistakes, maybe fail terribly, get something wrong. Comfort is hit the snooze button, you bought so many lotto tickets last week, it wasn't funny when it was worth 50 million, hoping like heck you're going to knock that off, even if you're only like the second layer down where you get 5 million each, that will be okay. You've already got your weekends planned, you're looking forward to Friday, you know how your year's going to be with your holidays. That's careful and conservative. So you're going to have a little chat, and because it's, you know, you might know each other too, and if it's mum and dad to child, or mum and dad to child, you know each other. So you're going to ask, how much rattle has there been in your life this week? And just, okay, I'm just going to jump in again. Now this is why the courage bit is really, really important. The MRI imaging has been such a powerful advancement for neuroscience. So we now know what common sense has told us for years. Courage is a mediator or a bridge for the brain with regards to how it processes adversity and challenge. So when a potentially scary moment or adversity comes, for example COVID, the way people process that and the way they then respond to that is directly related to a perspective of courage. So if they have a perspective of courage, what it does is it seems to be a bridge and a mediator for the limbic system or the fear system of the brain and the big frontal lobes. So if we have a courage perspective, the MRI scanning shows that we light up here with the pressure coming, which then means I can connect with my teammates, we can go back to what the plan was, we can run that out and see how it plays. Our peripheral vision is different, our speed of processing is faster. So all of these lovely things come off having a perspective courage, which is no handbrake, and then we step into the pressure. If we don't have a courage perspective, it's also a mediator, which then goes to panic, fight or flight. That's where that stuff is. So when we see that happening, all that's telling us is that the deeper layers around perspectives are not a courageous one. So as a parent, this becomes even more important, because what I found over those years as a clinical psychologist is I cannot help people if they have anxiety or depression. I can't help rugby players or any form of athletes if they're suffering from confidence issues, self-doubt issues, or panic, performance anxiety. But you think that's what we go to see a psychologist for, and what a lot of parents try to help their kids with to help them feel less anxious. Now the reason that this is just my own perspective on it professionally, is that the reason we can't influence those things is the anxiety is a symptom, the depression is a symptom, the not eating is a symptom, the fear of failure is a symptom of something deeper that's going on. Now if we think about what that means is, well, if that's way down the chain of events, if it's a symptom, I then go, well, what's it about? And what I found is that there seems to be two primary emotions. One is pride and one is shame. Now from pride, that starts a sequence of events that happen automatically. Pride leads to self-love, self-like. Self-like then leads to ambition, because you start to see yourself in a positive light and see your skills and your abilities. The ambition then leads to enthusiasm, which then leads to, I'll develop an IPP plan in line with a big goal that I want to achieve, and now we're starting to really get some good foundations in place. They get to work, they have successes, now we get some confidence and self-belief off that. So I don't need to help my daughters with anxiety, and I don't need to help try and generate self-belief. Leave it all alone, give them a place to cry if they want to cry, but as soon as the emotions and the tears stop and they start talking, now they're thinking. So then I just, well, what's the most courageous thing you need to do right now? Because if we go pride's the key, then how do we generate pride? Courage. So whenever you behave courageously, what's the first feeling we have? We feel pretty good. Whether it goes well or not becomes irrelevant. We just feel good about ourselves that we stepped in and stopped that bully at school. We stepped in and looked after that little fella that was getting a smash on the playground. The kids, when they do that, they just feel like, yeah, I helped them out. And they feel great. So then in life, our job as a parent and ourselves is we just have to mediate courage. We have to generate opportunities for the brave to be courageous, and then watch what will grow off that space. The opposite is true though. If they behave cowardly, how do we feel when we behave cowardly and we do something we know we've let fear dominate us and make a decision to step back? We feel pretty shitty. We should have spoken up at a meeting, but we didn't. We go home ruminating about it. We go home fantasising about, I wish I'd said that. We can't go to sleep. We wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, oh, I'm still feeling upset about that because I didn't say something. It just stays with us. Shame, self-dislike. We get angry at ourselves. Depression and anxiety, self-hate turned in, bang. Deep down goes depression. That's where that comes from. Track that back to, cowardliness is a strong term. It might be like giving into fear, however you want to term it, but it still leads to the same place, anxiety, etc. So we don't like yourself. If we don't like ourselves, we don't believe we can do much, then our ambition now becomes repressed. We actually don't have ambition, we have laziness, can't get out of bed, we have all of those sort of symptoms of that. And then what that leads to is, I doubt myself, I have fear of failure, because if I doubt myself, I don't think I can, so then the fear of failure pops up, and then fear of failure leads to performance anxiety, which sounds like this in a changing room. That is not excitement, right? That is nerves plus fear. Fear of failure, fear of letting people down, fear of not playing very well, fear of not making the All Blacks off this because it's a key game. That's what that is. So all we have to do is understand that this is courage. So first goal, identity. Know who they are. Build that up. Build the ledger. Get the peoples on the wall. There's our family. Just see how they, when people come to visit, oh, who's that? Oh, that's my great-great-great-great-great-granddad. What did he do? Oh, we'll make a cup of tea because it's a big story. Right, that becomes that chat. Straight away, they're a different young person. Second one is, we now start pushing courage. Goal is brave, courage. Then how do we do that? We just have to ask this question, what's the most courageous thing you can do right now? So when I'm supporting in a clinical psychology role, I'll just let people be emotional, because that's just emotion, that's just natural. It's anger, sadness, grief, rage. It's just feeling. But a lot of people struggle because they think, what do I have to do to help them? All you have to do is just let them be. But that's not going to last forever. I worked out as a clinical psychologist, I know this is very insensitive, but I worked out you can only snot cry, like absolutely because you start, if anyone haven't done that, you should do that just to experience that, because you just lose control and you get hot, sweat, snot. You can only do that for 10-15 minutes. You cannot go any longer, because I reckon you'll pass out. It's like triathlon. It's that hard out. So I'd sit there with a clock behind them, and they'd be like, I'd say, help yourself to tissues. It's no rush. Looks like it's really hard. They're really struggling at the moment. I just reflect what I'm thinking in my heart. It's all right, take your time. You're really upset. And away they go. And I watch the clock and go, okay, 5 minutes. Being tired now. Sure enough, 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes in, oh, thank you, that feels so much better. Right? And it's passed. And I go, that looks like that was really tough. And they go, yeah, it was like hard out. And I go, yeah, I could see that. And then there's like this little moment, and I go, so what's the most courageous thing that you need to do now? When we start talking about the thing that they were crying about. And that one question, school pressure, school exams, let it all be out there. And then say, so what's the most courageous thing you need to do with your study, lad? Right? And just let them sit with it, because they know what it is. My daughter's oldest one, lazy, man, bright, unbelievably bright, but lazy. I see her mum trying to help her with all her homework, trying to help her learn her maths, trying to help her do all this stuff, hard out at the table, and I'm thinking, what are you doing? Because she's a clinical psych too, different end of the spectrum. And I go, you're stuffing that child up. I'm like, hard out, she'll learn. Right, and this is like when she's 11, 12 years old, she's just like in there trying to do it all for her. And she's just got it this year. But it's her thing now, it's her gig now. And you can see it in her plans, hard out work, stress, she's under the pump. I'm going, beautiful, there it is. So then we need to just take the pressure off ourselves, because we don't have to help them get the stuff, we just help them be brave and courageous, and they'll get there. Right, just wrap it up with one last couple of comments, because we're 7 o'clock downstairs.
No, it was 7:30.
Oh yeah, great.
Just get dinner.
Okay. So see how I'm putting a list around? I've left the outcome alone. They want to win, great, so outstanding, I want you to win too. You win, you keep winning well, man, this is going to be good for the family, because we're worth $50 million, this is a big business now. And I'll be your manager. All right, so we want them to win because it's good for everybody. So we can just say, great stuff, let's rip into it, let's see what we can do, because let's say they're in that space, let's see what they got. Beautiful, leave that alone. Then we come back to make sure they know who they are and make sure they understand the role of courage in their training. We're talking with the rugby guys today. The week schedule can often in sport get very safe, because they just do their technical and they do their tactical and they do their analysis, and there's the week gone, but not once have they been brave. And so the crazy little study, 60 people, they put them in an MRI tube, and this is why it's just helping them do courage every day. And the study was very open. This is a courage study. You want to see what your brain does when you decide to be courageous or not. And they put up a conveyor belt, and they had a little switch in their tube to make a decision about whether they brought a snake closer to them or further away. That was the challenge, right? And I just like to think it was like this big cobra. But anyway, then they just tracked their brains to see what they did when they made that decision. And the neuroscience of it, the fear centre lit up. So every single one of them had fear. Boom, it was wide awake. So the fear is innate. Everyone has it. There wasn't a difference across that 60. But what happened is the people that pushed the button to bring this, because they thought fear and courage lived in the same place. And when you're brave, it reduces the fear. What they found is the fear's there, and it's like, boom, snake, right? The people that pushed the button for the snake to come closer had another little area light up beside it, and they called that the SGACC, which I said to the rugby boys, they had an opportunity, they've done something incredible in science, and they go and call it the area SGACC. Like, how bloody inspirational is that? They could have called it the lioness or the lion. That would have been a good name to give that little area. So they decide they're going to bring that snake closer. Boom. And I went, wow, imagine that, because if they called that lion, they decide that, the lion wakes up. And then I love that framework, because now we've got the yin and the yang in harmony. The fear's the dark shade. The lion's the light, so the other side in the brain, but we'll just move the other side for that. And now it's about getting our courage as big as our fear, and now we've got harmony. Because a lot of athletes are overloaded with fear talk about no motivation. They feel flat before they play. They can't get fired up even though it's like a really important final. They just can't figure it out. All of that is anxiety and fear of failure, fear of making mistakes. And that's that with no lion awake. So it's available energy, but they can't avail it. So then you've got it out of no balance, you see. So then you've got little courage, big fear, or big fear, little courage. So that's why there's no energy. It's just not available. The idea is when you get it harmony. So anyway, what they found though, too, with that, is that lion and lioness woke up 6 seconds before they pushed the button. That's the big bit. 6 seconds before they pushed that button, the lion had already gone, brrr, right? Now that says it's unconscious. It's an unconscious, automatic decision that isn't a thought decision. Their response to adversity was to step in, take the opportunity. Now 6 seconds, I said the rugby boys today, if you go rugby, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, that is a long time. In the game of rugby, that's try. That's an opportunity, see it before anyone else sees it, boom, take it, there's a gap, there's a tip on, there's the unload, boom, score on the post. That can all happen in 6 seconds. So you can see how our job is, we want them to practice courage every day, same with us, because that's an innate response to fear. So if you're not practicing courage, the lion's just asleep. So then you'll have a situation where more than often or not, you have generalised anxiety. You'll have more worry about life just as a general rule. People say, oh, what do you like as a person? Oh, I'm always a worrier. I have a really upset tummy and I go to the toilet 16 times a day and I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, straight away, worry. That's just that. But if you're practicing courage every day, you watch how that then flattens you out, because it then takes that, which is a normal one, but we now have the presence of the lioness. And then we have a different response in the way we see the world. So I had 2 goals with my daughters, only 2. My wife has very different goals. I thought, okay, so how to prepare a young woman for life? I thought, well, 1, they need to swim because New Zealand's surrounded by ocean, so I thought it's pretty important they learn how to swim in the sea. That was the first goal. Second one, they learn how to fight. And I mentored a lovely lady for a long time who was a Muay Thai kickboxer, very good. And she said, I have to pay you. I said, you don't have to pay me a cent because one day I'm going to ask you for a favour. Then I texted her like 3 years ago, I hadn't seen her for years, texted her and said, hello. She texts back, is it time, is it? So she comes home and trains my girls to fight, and they fight each other. So imagine 2 sisters going at it, fully up with pads and everything, going at sorting out their issues. And so I need to talk to her now because no one's been knocked out yet. So that just tells me they haven't gone to that full place of letting go. So I'm going to say, because she just coaches them, so I'm going to say now for this last block, I want you to get padded up too, and now they fight you. And you have permission to go at it with them. Because unless, this is the thinking, unless they know what it feels like to be in a situation where there is a fight, how the heck are they going to be when they're in a pub and some guy's a bit of a prick to them? They will freak out about that moment, but if they have the sense that they know how to look after themselves, they can turn around and say to him very nicely, go away. And if he doesn't, they can flatten him. And then carry on with their beer. So they're my 2 goals. We see how that's about, I want them to have that, because the anxiety is going to be there anyway. It's just going to be there because it's a human, that's the job. It just does its job 24/7, looking for risk. We just need to have the lion sleep, let it sleep, wake up, sleep, wake up, and it will respond to indecision, it will respond to the COVID in a very different way and perspective if we have that. Because the athletes have done very well in COVID in the level that I'm in, because they do this work every day. The ones that are struggling are the coaches and the management and the support crafts crew, because they don't do that work. So they're more upset, they're more work for me at the moment than the athletes are. Okay, next question. What needs to happen for you to feel happy when you go to bed at the end of the day? So you can ask them about the sports if you're talking to an athlete. What needs to happen in a game of footy for you to be happy when you go to sleep at the end of the day? With a parent, it's what needs to happen for you to feel happy when you go to sleep at night with the way the day's gone. So just ask that question. What needs to happen for you to feel happy as you drop off to sleep? And then see what answers people give you back about how they like the day to go, then feel happy at the end. And if it's a sport, you can ask about the sport directly. Okay. Again, my apologies for cutting people short. I've just been given the 4 or 5 minute call. This potentially is the most important question I've asked you. Because what I've asked by what needs to happen for you to feel happy is I've asked you to start tapping your deepest expectations that you have on yourself. So what governs our emotions about life is our expectations. If your expectations are met, you feel okay. If they're not met, you do not feel okay. In sport, usually the expectation of what needs to happen for us to feel happy when we go to sleep is that we have won very well. Played incredibly well, almost perfectly. All social media I scroll through on my way home tells me I'm the best in the world. And then I go to bed feeling very happy. But then I wake up feeling terrible because now the expectation is so high I have to now do it again. And that spins them out. So even when they're successful, for me to go to bed feeling happy, I have to be perfect, I have to perform, I have to do my personal best. Gives them a little moment of feeling good, but a very big moment off the back of that of feeling very scared. So it sets up a terrible cycle of having to then not muck it up. So then fear of failure, fear of letting people down, you see how that all starts to wind together? So if we have success or the expectation to be perfect or not be imperfect, it can still work. You guys can still be very successful, but it's a very rocky road. Because when the numbers don't add up, depression comes very quickly. Anger, irritability, snapping, difficulty to have relationships with people, off the Richter scale, unpredictable type behaviour because they're just popping all over the place in a sense of themselves, which isn't very nice. So you can get performance off there, but you'll just hear repeated stories of people blowing to bits because it sets up that. That's a time away, ticking time bomb. So this is the bit I'm just encouraging people to think about is my advice in that space is if we try and get real balance in there, that's why I go ask if we can put outcome to 4 or 3 down the list, because it still allows us to have, for me to go to bed feeling happy with 1. Yes, that's lovely, that's part of it. But you see how we've done identity, courage, those 2, that becomes part of the equation. What needs to happen for me to go to bed feeling proud about myself is I didn't back down. I was me. I stepped forward. I wore my Viking helmet to the post-match media, for example. So number 1 is I was just me. But as parents, we can have that conversation. So athletes link in with me from overseas and I say, how was it? They go, I won. I text back, you know I don't give a shit. Turn my phone off, because they've just broken a number 1 rule, which is when I ask how it is, I want 90% of the experience. I want to know how it felt. I want to know what it was like, what was the context, what was the weather like, what was the competition like. So I want them to give me the cake. They go straight to the icing, I'd send back that. But if they give me cake, I'll try and then Skype them or Zoom them and talk in detail about the cake, not the outcome, and then I'll let them go outcome. And I'll go, oh, what was the result? We won, David. We're good. Right? And then there's the 10%, that's the icing, that's the cherry. Because you think about life, when I grew up, we were not rich, so we got lots of good cake. We only got icing on birthdays and Christmas. Full stop. And I reckon it's part of life now, as people think McDonald's is a natural, it's like a normal part of life, and I'm like, no, it's like a treat. So then you just look at that, and it's up to you about how you push this. So for my kids at school, all I did was, you know how school reports come back with the effort column? My girls knew that if they both got very good or higher for effort, we got dressed up in our number 1s and they had an open wallet to go anywhere in town for dinner. We only go twice a year because there are 2 reports a year, so we only go out twice a year. And they all want to go to McDonald's or the cowboy one with the ribs, Lone Star. And we'd walk in our number 1s. And people be like, what the heck? So you see, I'm just pouring reinforcement on effort. And if they also did well on those subjects, we celebrated that too with a bit of a pudding and something on the end. But the first thing was they had to have both sisters together. If one wasn't, we didn't go, because I want them working as a team. Then how does that apply to now when they're this age? Well, in sevens, our number one success parameter is it's a defence one, which is you're off the ground before the ball gets to the second set of hands, which then means we have 7 men in the system for defence at all times, because that's really fast. So we just aim to have 100%. So we really push them in that space. And I think they played really well in this year. They would have gone to Olympics and performed incredibly well. They won 4 out of the 6 World Series game tournaments and were second in one and fifth in the other one. So they were on fire. But the one stat was the heart stat. We call it the heart stat, which essentially equals, for me to go to bed feeling happy, I just have to die. That's all that says, is I have to work so hard that I just push myself beyond the limit of self-care. So you see how that's a really different stat, eh? It becomes a very different goal. It becomes a very different way that they think before they play. I don't have to make all my tackles. I don't have to be the best player on the field. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. We don't have to win. If we do, that's great. What I have to worry about today is I just die. Plus, if they're also anchored into their history, they've got all those beautiful stories of this sort of thing anyway, just like great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandma did when she was climbing Kathmandu with no oxygen and bare feet. Right? So you see how this layer now, what needs to happen when we go to bed? I've honoured my history and my ancestry and been me. I've been incredibly courageous in the way I've approached my physics exam. I've done everything I could. And then I just let it go. Give it everything I've got, see what happens. Different conversations, different perspectives, different in a world with regards to how they then are as a person and the way they see things. They go to a competition, and now it's an opportunity to express themselves and their family and die. So I think that's probably the nice little summary point of how that starts to work and the way it is a parent. Now, you don't have to be a psychologist. This is really, really important. You don't have to be a psychologist for them. You've got that framework that you can set up. There's a nice little language base that Jason and I use. So all I do with my girls is pick them up because they're basketball mad. How was that? And they know, since I've been training them since they were 5, my best memory from today was, what I learnt from today was, and what I'm proud about, because we talked about pride before, so I've just chucked it in there as a primary equation to ask them for review. I go, how was that? They know. That's how I want them to talk about their day at school. I pick them up from high school and there's 1,800 kids coming out of Hillcrest High, and that's massive power for me, because I pick them up at the front gate. So you imagine 1,800 kids storming out. I pull in, I even one day had an accident. I wiped out the front of a Toyota Corolla with my Ranger, boom, and the girls are like, and I'm like, so everyone, imagine that 800 people watching. I'm like, oh, that was a bit unexpected, wasn't it? Anyway, they hop in and I go, how was your day? Not that time, I didn't ask them that time. But they now know that's the cue. That's the cue for them to actually follow with an optimistic framework, which is, my best memory from today was, what I've learned from today is, and what I'm proud about. They go, good. I just turn my truck off. 1,800 pounds of human pressure coming out that school. They're like, my best memory from today, what I'm proud about, let's go. So with these guys, I'd ask that question, how was training? And then just sit quietly. And if they're in a mood and you're clearly emotional, just put Johnny Denver on and listen to your music for a while. Go, sweet, okay, we'll talk when you're ready. Then they settle with their feelings, they pass. You look really upset at the moment, just let me know when you want to yarn. It's been a hard training. Right. Then they're talkative. Oh, how was it? Okay, Dad, my best memory from today was... But then you go into that memory. Oh, slow down. Tell me about that. Deepen it down. Get the picture, get the context, get the moment. There's a conversation to have in that. Then what did you learn? It's usually about the same thing. The learning and pride usually tied to the same emotion, because the brain will remember what we pay attention to. It'll discard. Most people end up with moments of shit in their head because that's what they pay attention to. And then the good stuff just gets chucked out because the brain can't deal with that much information, so it discards it because they're not paying attention to it. Make them pay attention to the good stuff. Also, they're learning in the adversity. They could have got a hiding that day, but they still died. That's still success, but they didn't win. I wish you all well. Exciting. I just love what you guys have got going down here, because this is not happening anywhere else in New Zealand. What you have down south is incredible. Up there, it's all separated, it's all disconnected. We've got people trying to do good stuff, but they're not doing it aligned like you guys are. So at your age and stage, you guys are in a very good place. And we don't know what we're going to do with COVID. We don't know what that means for international stuff. So you get a chance to just do what you love, but you see that's what I'll be challenging you. Actually, you should now be as more active than you probably would have been after this chat, doing what you love. You'll get, I guess you'll get to see whether you do love what you want or you're doing it maybe for the wrong reason. So it's a great challenge because now you're not sure what you're going to be doing it for. So I wish you well. All the best. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks.